from Hiroshima, Tokyo, Kyoto, South Carolina, and Missouri. Fantastic. And we are right in the next to the atomic bomb dome in Hiroshima. So we're talking from an iconic place.
Oh, honey.
Absolutely wanted to do this session from here. This is what you see, 8:33 in the morning, Hiroshima on Wednesday. The dome is under repair, and you have the fabulous Peace Memorial Park by Kenzo Tange, the park and the museum that gave life to Hiroshima after 1949. So I want to all of you to have a sense of place, that we are in a very, very important, universally important place. Thank you, Cody, for keeping us together. And I would like to just pass the floor over to Monte.
Thank you, Nassrine. Peter, Stuart, welcome. Thank you for making time for us. I know there are always glitches, but we've overcome them magnificently, I think. So thank you very much. First of all, let me welcome all the participants who might be listening in as well. As you know, is an Eden Seminars project. Eden stands for Emerging and Developing Economies Network. It was set up just about a year ago, and today it is partnering with the Afghan Fellowship Legacy Project, AFLP, which was an initiative that the Eden Chair, Dr. Nassrine Azimi, set up as a project for quite a long time, and has trained several hundreds of Afghan youth as potential leaders of their country in the future. Now, this is the legacy from those days, and I must thank Mihoko Watanabe from UNITA, the United Nations Institute for Training and Research, for the generous follow-up and support that she has given us for this legacy that Nassrine created when she was head of UNITA herself. The location, as you saw just now, is in Hiroshima of this wonderful institution, UNITA. And it is, of course, a very sacred place for anyone who values life. We are also privileged to have the network extending to Afghanistan in a live project that was born about a year ago. No, not quite. Actually, it was born in January this year and has gone off at roaring speed to create a network of botanical gardens in Afghanistan. 3 universities in Kabul, Paktia, and Bamiyan have already committed themselves to this. And I understand that there was a training seminar yesterday, which went really, really well. So thanks to this cyberspace incursions into our lives, we are now able to interact almost regularly, not quite spontaneously, but regularly for sure. And I think this is also one such exercise. We are proud today to be able to have 2 stellar scientists behind us. Both of them are winners of the prestigious Cosmos Prize, and it is a privilege to have such experts behind us. We will have, in speaking order today, Stuart Pimm, I think the leading living conservation biologist in the world today. I know Stuart will blush when he hears this, but blushes notwithstanding, the truth is sometimes painful, Stuart, and you have to take it and live with it. So I'm really happy to have Stuart here. His work has inspired my own work many, many years ago, long before I met him. And I'm really happy that he's here with us to have the big picture of showing us the importance of biodiversity conservation, the role of plants in this, and the fact that we are all together to bring this not just to the privileged countries of the world, but even to the underprivileged ones where there is not necessarily this kind of infrastructure to enable things to happen magically. The magic has been put into place by Peter Raven, our other speaker, as the head of a botanical garden, who himself is one of the greatest living authorities on creating plant inventories and managing botanical gardens. So Peter and Stuart, we're extremely privileged to have you here. And Peter, please forgive us for having intruded on your leisure this morning. I'm glad that Stuart had your cell phone number and we were able to get back to you quite quickly. But in any event, let me thank you and Pat for this joint effort in making us have this Zoom seminar this morning. I know that South Carolina and Missouri and Tokyo and Hiroshima are not necessarily close by in terms of geographic space, but thanks to this wonderful world that is now emerging, we are able to meet and greet as almost as if we were in front of each other. I look forward to your interventions, your advice. The Afghan people, I think, need you. This Eden project of the Botanical Gardens Network, together with the Afghan Fellowship Legacy Project, came about because of the, in a sense, triggered off by the untimely death of Tetsu Nakamura, who had worked so hard with the Afghan people to bring water and life back into the villages of Afghanistan in hardship areas. We had thought of the botanical garden before, just a little before, but the untimely death, I think, spurred us on as well. And we're really grateful, Stuart and Peter, that you are also behind us now. The Afghani people themselves, I think, have it deep inside them to bring back these long legacy of gardens and water and these wonderful landscapes, the fruit, the trees, the bounties of nature, which have sadly been marred by several decades of sadness. So I think you're bringing joy back to where there was once sadness, and I really hope that you will do well. I think in the end, I'm reminded of the words of Sidney Brenner, the late Nobel laureate who passed away almost around the time that Eden was created, who said, I believe a scientist should be judged should be judged by the people he or she has helped, rather than by the number of prizes bestowed on him or her. I think that's, for me, very, very true of all our resource persons who have come up to us with this spirit. And I am also grateful to the Dalai Lama for placing the botanical gardens in context. In his wonderful book, where he looks at the convergence of science and spirituality, it's called The Universe in a Single Atom, he says, give the ones you love wings to fly, roots to come back to, and reasons to stay. We hope that the botanical gardens will become just this. And thank you, Stuart and Peter. I would like to hand the microphone now to Stuart for his opening introductory remarks. Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you, Nassrine.
Thank you so much, Monte, for your incredibly kind remarks. I'm passionate about biodiversity, about the incredible variety of life that we have on the planet. And that experience grew for me when I entered Afghanistan, because I had grown up in Great Britain, a rather cold island, wet island off the western coast of Europe. And as a teenager, I got the unique opportunity to travel overland all the way across France and Germany and Austria and Yugoslavia and Bulgaria and then Turkey and then Iran and Afghanistan. And I entered Afghanistan from the West and spent a couple of months there in the summer of 1968, and then returned to Afghanistan in 1970 with an expedition I led from Oxford University. We were interested in the lakes near Bamiyan at Bandia Mir, the site of Afghanistan's first national park. And of course, what fascinated me was the fact that Afghanistan is a country of deserts, a country of grasslands, of ecosystems that were very, very different from the ones that I'd grown up with in Britain and in Europe. And I think that it's important for us to celebrate the incredible variety of ecosystems that we have on the planet. Deserts are sometimes viewed as being barren places, but they're full of fascinating plants, and they're full of fascinating animals too. Driving at night to escape the summer heat and the summer winds, you know, we'd see all sorts of wonderful animals hopping across the road as we drove, you know, from the northwest through Kandahar to Kabul, and then eventually to Bamiyan. And so I think this celebration of the different kinds of places is very much a part of what biodiversity is all about. Afghanistan is not a well-known country, but it is a country that has beautiful landscapes, beautiful and interesting animals and plants. Now, my interest was back then was in animals, birds in particular. We were catching and ringing migratory birds. But one couldn't help but be amazed by all these strange plants adapted to these desert conditions. And so that, in a way, was my first, first-hand experience of what an extraordinary diverse planet we live on. The tragic thing, of course, is that we are not treating the planet well. Our human population has grown and grown. When I started teaching as a professor, I said to my students, when I retire, not that I have any plans to, when I retire, the world's population may be 7 billion people, twice what it is now. Well, I've not retired and it's now 7 billion people. And those of us in Western countries confound that by being ever more aggressive in what we consume. We are not treating the planet well. And as a consequence, we're beginning to lose biodiversity. We're beginning to lose species. So when former Vice President Al Gore, in his book, a movie, An Inconvenient Truth, talks about species going extinct 1,000 times faster than they should, he's talking about my work. So we recognize that we have a considerable challenge in looking after the Earth's biological resources. Now, of course, everybody knows that a big piece of that loss of biological diversity is what we do to the tropical rainforests of the world. We are cutting those forests down, we are burning them, we are putting billions of tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. But those are not the only ecosystems that we destroy. And is what we do to the world's dry lands, the places that are too dry for forests, grasslands, deserts, steppe. And those areas we are also destroying by a variety of mechanisms. We harvest firewood, often unsustainably. I have memories of seeing small children loading their donkeys with every scrap of vegetation they could find in the barren steppe around Bandiyamir in order for their families to be able to cook meals. We are putting too many goats on the landscape. We are causing dust storms, and we're causing soil erosion. And there are a whole load of ills that we push onto these drylands. Drylands are about half the Earth's surface, about half the terrestrial surface is dryland, and we have overgrazed a big chunk of that. And so while at the United Nations, people know about climate change and they know about biodiversity, there's a very important convention on desertification. And that desertification is a process that harms people, but it also harms biodiversity. So, you know, the question is what we can do about that. What are the challenges? Clearly, setting aside national parks like Afghanistan has done with Bandiyamir, the place that was my home for 2 summers, is one of them. But you know, a lot of people don't get the chance to see the variety of life up close and personal. And so I'm enormously excited about this opportunity to create botanic gardens in Afghanistan, because that gives a chance for people to see, you know, the diversity of plants, the different kinds of plants, different plants that are valuable to us, like fruit trees. And you know, you mentioned Nassrine, the spiritual side of botanic gardens. I do think they are wonderful places. One of my favorite botanic gardens, not to diminish the magnificent garden that Peter has created at Missouri. One of my favorite gardens is the one at Al-Quds University in Palestine, which is to me a very special place because of the difficulties there, but also a place where you can go and celebrate plants, celebrate that remarkable tradition of Islamic science and mathematics. So I think with that segue, I have talked about the planet and I've talked about botanic gardens, and Peter is the expert really on both. And so with that, you know, over to you, Peter.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say how very much I appreciate being able to talk in the spirit of the Hiroshima attention, because I consider that love and peace between human beings is the only way that any of us will have any hope to move into a solid future. And I think for whatever reasons and whatever good it might have done in the short run, the dropping of those bombs was one of the most catastrophic things that's ever happened in the history of the world. We have about 7.9 billion people in the world now, and it's going towards 9.92 billion more over the next 30 years. Those who think seriously about the world and population consider that we might possibly be able to support 2 billion people on an ongoing basis, on a sustainable basis. And we're 7.9 now, going for 9.9. We are using, according to Global Footprint Network, probably 175% of all the available productivity in the world, and that can't be sustained. The rich nations of the world have the poor nations of the world in their grasp and are so much richer and consuming so much more per person that there is no way that we can collectively gain sustainability if we continue on this track. We have, if all the nations, if everyone in the world were living at the level of the nations of Western Europe, for example, it would take about 4 to 5 copies of the planet Earth to support them sustainably. If they're not being supported sustainably, that means that the productivity that they're consuming to support their lives is being drained out of the other nations of the world. And that's something that I think, for a variety of reasons, this effort might be able to address in a useful way. The women of the world, the women and children of the world, are largely disenfranchised, about 1 billion of them, gradually trying to get control of their own lives and to make contributions. And if we think about it, any one of those people who has no chance to contribute anything could be as intelligent as an Einstein or a Mozart or a Beethoven or some of the great philosophers of the Arab world, and yet we don't let them do it. We've got to win this battle. We've got to win this world. We've got to gain sustainability for the world through worldwide love, attention to one another, and a regard for what we all are as individual human beings. When the United Nations was formed at the end of World War II in the wake of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it was hoped that that would bring peace to the world. No, the greed of the richer nations of the world has been so great, their desire to get still more to consume when they're so far beyond any possible limit has been so great that it hasn't really worked effectively. Now, Afghanistan. Afghanistan has been overrun by so many people for so many thousands of years that it ought to be a subject of our respect. And it's a subject that I'm very privileged to be able to try to deal with, to try to create better things and to try to help the movement of the nation and its people forward. Overrun and conquered endlessly, Afghanistan, the people of Afghanistan, deserve a life of their own. Botanical gardens are able to communicate with people the joy of plants, the importance of plants, the importance of sustainability, and the interest that we all should have in the nature around us. This effort will help to stimulate that, will be a kind of a gift to the people of Afghanistan by encouraging them to build those botanical gardens on their own, which will not only help to show the way to sustainability, help them to appreciate their own natural history, and also help them to know that there are people outside of the country who care deeply about them and love them. I'm very pleased to be a part of this effort, and I will support it in any way that I can as the months and years go by. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Peter. I want to let you know that yesterday we had the first in-depth session with the team in Paktia University, the chancellor, the vice chancellor, the head of horticulture, the head of agricultural department. They were all there, supported by Arinovi, Sarada Krishnan, and Abi Meyer. So in a way, your students. And I can tell you, it was a session to weep for, because they were so thirsty for this knowledge. And one could see how easily we should be doing so much more of this work at the level of exchange between scientists. So let me quickly follow.
We're all one another's students, and we forget that only at our peril.
That's true.
We become students when other people take the lead and guide us to peaceful and loving and sustainable existence. All those people are wonderful, and I admire them deeply.
That's true. They were remarkable. I would like to ask Stuart and then Peter as well, because ironically, we are at the end of the UN Decade for Biodiversity. So we just finished the 10th year on the year of the great COVID-19. It says something about how maybe we have not learned our lessons. Time is not on our side. It's been 28 years since Rio and the Earth Summit. We don't have much progress to report. How do you see us doing things differently in general? And how do you see us bringing on board the countries that are really out of the interaction of science and technology that is now dominated by wealthier countries? I can share with you, I think you know the facts, 33 countries in the world do not even have a single functioning botanical garden. How would their scientists learn about their own ecosystem? How would they be able to deal with the changes that climate change will bring upon these countries? Most particularly, so many of them are in arid zones already. So we feel with Eden seminars, with the Botanical Garden Network project in Afghanistan, there seem to be also opportunities of doing things differently by being more modest, by networking more, by not aiming for grandiose schemes, but really using what we have now. Please guide us, Stuart, then Peter. How should we go about raising awareness that this biodiversity is us? We are the biodiversity that we need to protect. Over to you, Stuart.
You know, as you mentioned, 28 years after Rio, everybody knows about the Climate Convention. Most people know about the Biodiversity Convention. Very many fewer people know about the Desertification Convention that came out of Rio too. And that's a shame because, you know, desertification affects much more of the world than any of the others. That it affects poor nations of the world makes it a poor stepchild. I think, you know, we can look back on the last decade, the decade of biodiversity, and we can worry about the fact that we have not done as much as we'd like. The aspiration was to protect 17% of the Earth's terrestrial surface. And the aspiration also was to protect representative ecosystems of the Earth's surface. Now, have we done that as well as we'd liked? No. And I hope in the next decade we'll do more good. But I do think, you know, we need to celebrate what we've achieved. In that decade, Afghanistan has created, I believe, 2 national parks. One of them is Bandi Mir. One of them is in the in the mountains of the northeast. And you know, so let's celebrate that. Let's recognize Afghanistan for those incredible achievements of setting aside national parks under very, very difficult conditions. The lakes at Bandi Mir are such a special and interesting ecosystem. You know, bravo to Afghanistan for making that a national park. You know, it's been 50 years since I was there. You know, I hope one day I'll be able to go back. I hope other tourists will go there and celebrate what a beautiful country we have. Now, do we need to do more? Yes, we need to do a lot more. And we need to protect more of the land. And, you know, how do we do that? We do that by fundamentally inspiring people to celebrate their national heritage, their natural heritage, of getting them to celebrate the things that are theirs, that are special. And by setting up national parks, and Afghanistan has done that, But also, I think by setting up these gardens, these are going to be places where Afghans can see, you know, the botanical heritage that's theirs. It's a very special botanical heritage. I think Peter can talk to that much more effectively than I can. But it is a very, very important heritage. And, you know, when I go to, when I go to a museum, when I go to a zoo, when I go to a botanic garden, and I see, you know, lots and lots of young children going around excited and asking their parents what's going on, you know, I see the next generation of scientists. And as Peter so eloquently put it, you know, that next generation can have, you know, can have an Einstein and a Mozart just as easily as the United States can, or any other country can. So, you know, botanic gardens are nurseries for plants, but they're also nurseries for people too. And I think they give us an opportunity for people to appreciate nature, to celebrate what's theirs, and get them to think about their natural world with pride and with a sense of ownership.
Thank you. Peter, what would you add?
Well, personally, I'd like to think of the opportunity of forming botanical gardens in Afghanistan as a kind of a love letter from the rest of the world to Afghanistan. We're saying that this has been a model that's been successful for us in helping to inspire adults and children to appreciate the unity and the importance of life on Earth. And I think we're offering that vision in the hopes that it will be accepted as a sign of true affection, true care for what happens in Afghanistan. I don't expect botanical gardens to be founded in Afghanistan and then suddenly people will become conservation oriented. But I do think that anything that brings the other countries of the world, whether they be Japan, Western Europe, the United States, or whatever, into contact with Afghanistan, may help to lay the foundation for the kind of revolution that the world so badly needs. I want the people of Afghanistan to know that what we're offering them is help as they figure out how to build their own botanical gardens, to show the variety of species found in Afghanistan, parenthetically, something that's quite difficult because of the huge elevational differences within the country, and appreciate that those are nature, that we're a part of nature, that they will benefit if they care for nature, and that we'll benefit if we'll care for nature. But I hope, and I know I keep coming back to this, that the people of Afghanistan would always know that whatever help we can give them in this, if they decide to accept the invitation that we've given them to build these gardens, will be regarded as a sign of affection and understanding and mutual respect. If it does that, it will be a very important element in a world that is suffering many evils at present, which hasn't yet found the way to get out of those evils, but which needs every single person on earth, and certainly those in the embattled and much traversed country of Afghanistan, in the whole game. Botanical gardens seem to me to be an ideal way of doing that. The rich flora of Afghanistan is wonderfully attractive, deeply interesting, and ought to be preserved. And the botanical gardens of Afghanistan can certainly, as they do here, help the city dwellers to understand the wealth of the nature in the whole country. I love this project, and I deeply hope that it will be successful for so many reasons, but they're mostly personal, interpersonal, international, and supportive. I'll do anything I can to make it go. Thank you.
Fantastic. Before maybe also giving the floor to the others if they have questions, I wanted to build on what you've said. Being born in Iran myself, I know that throughout history, all the great cities and gardens in Iran, in Afghanistan, in the larger Middle East, in North Africa, in Morocco, in Egypt, in Pakistan, they were not just the decision of the rulers, they were the result of our openness to science and technology. We extracted those gardens by mastering water, the karez in Afghanistan, the kanat in Iran. The mastery of water, the science behind it was what allowed all the people in these regions for centuries, if not millennia, to create prosperous cities, prosperous gardens. I think one point I would like to build on Stuart's comments, it's true that we've had many achievements. What I find lacking in the language today of whether it is protecting biodiversity or even sustainable development goals, there is not enough history in it, because peoples from our region forget that we have done this before. We were able to create prosperous gardens. We were able, across the Silk Road in the middle of the desert, to create oases and fruit orchards. And by not giving that sense of pride back to the people, by not reminding that there was a golden age of Islam, that during the Edo period, Japan was a model of sustainability. They learned the lesson the hard way. By making it entirely a 19th, 20th century production of the Western world, we have made this concept devoid of culture, of history, and of the spirituality that comes with it.
It celebrates that Islamic learning. And for them, it's a matter of intense pride. And that's, I think, why I find the place so compelling. I hope that will be true here. I hope it will give the Afghans a sense of fascination with what they have, but give them the opportunity, as you point out, to celebrate the fact that these valleys, particularly Bamiyan, were rich agricultural areas that stand in such stark contrast to the deserts beyond. And they were made such wonderful places by extraordinarily clever scientists and engineers. So there are places that speak to our history. I mean, very fortunate coming from Great Britain, where Kew Gardens is just dripping in British history. So it's a place to go for the plants. It's a place to go for our history. Some of it is not always sort of the politics that we'd like. We British collected all sorts of things from around the world for our own purposes. But you know, the history is there, and I hope these gardens will celebrate, you know, the Islamic tradition of botany and of medicine and medicinal plants and of water and of agriculture. I think all of that is something to that we hope these gardens will celebrate and inspire.
Thank you. I hope so too. Peter, you want to add to that?
Well, simply to say that I hope, I keep coming back to the same thing, but to me, the most important thing is linking people, the love between people, the resistance, the refusal to disenfranchise people, and the idea that these gardens and anything that goes with them, educational or otherwise, might be regarded as a gift, not from someone superior, not from a historically richer nation, but from a friend. if we don't learn to be friends with one another, this century will not see us out. And Afghanistan, so much trouble in the past with Western nations passing through and fighting and what have you. And gee, let's take it something like Hiroshima and assume that we can make that up somehow in this very traditional and peaceful way, the building of botanical gardens, the knowledge of plants, the dependency that we all have on plants, and the wonderful future that we can have together if we determine to do it.
Yeah, I would second that. I mean, as Peter's pointed out, you know, Afghanistan has suffered sort of more invasions from, you know, Genghis Khan, Tamerlane, you know, the British, the Russians, the Americans, good knows what. You know, it would be nice for us to be able to say, look, we have something to offer you other than you being a pawn in geopolitics. And I too share Peter's optimism of feeling that this can be viewed as a gift, a genuine gift, a gift of kindness and a love to celebrate that Afghan heritage.
And I would say again that one of the things that really excites me about this project is the analogy with Hiroshima, because in a sense, although no atomic bomb was dropped on Afghanistan, it might as well have been. Those who saw Afghanistan 50 years ago would not recognize it today. Troubles, troubles, and troubles. And let's use this again as a greeting card, as an act of love, as a sign of our willingness to cooperate now in building a better future together. We will contribute all the knowledge or anything else that's necessary, but I honestly believe that the most important thing we can contribute is recognizing and embracing the Afghani people and giving our spiritual and all other kinds of love and feeling for them, recognize that they're just like us, and help them to find a better future. Botanical gardens being a very nice, and as I said before, I think kind of a greeting card of our intentions. I really do believe in that. In fact, I so believe in it, I don't think that any other attitude will get us through the next few decades.
Thank you very much. I'm really moved. I think it's this depth of feeling that will get us through. I myself, like Nassrine, come from a country which has had several decades of sadness and is struggling to get out of this. And I know that it creates a sense of despair at the time, but more importantly, it creates in one's mind a sense of cynicism that nothing will work. And that, I think, is more dangerous. And it is to overcome that cynicism that this love, care, and the true depth of what is a gift. A gift is something that you don't ask back anything in return for. That's what it is. And that is what I think the world today has forgotten. And perhaps crossroads of capitalism today, which is the harbinger of all these overconsumption of resources and threats to life on Earth beyond the human being, all of this is a result of forgetting the true meaning of what a gift is and how gifts can sustain life rather than taking for your own benefit. So I think there is a depth to this project that goes beyond biodiversity. It goes to the heart of how we value life on Earth in all its diverse forms. And the Botanical Garden is just the doorway to this Garden of Eden.
We're living in an age where you know, we spend our lives on Zoom, and you know, I wish, you know, I wish I were out wandering around Bandi Amir looking at birds, you know, but one day, for the time being, it's going to be sitting here in my very nice study. But the consequence of that is that the world is now a very open place. It's easier to reach our colleagues. It's easier to reach resources. I've been a professor at Duke University for almost 20 years. I have never been into the Duke University library other than for meetings. And the reason is that all knowledge is online. And, you know, we can contact each other, we can talk to each other, we can exchange ideas. I can write scientific papers with people I've never met. I do that all the time. And so, you know, we are one world. So colleagues in Afghanistan can reach out to us. We can reach out to them. We can give them that help in a way that would be inconceivable even a few years ago. I mean, even 10 years ago, the internet connections would have been difficult. Now they are routine. You know, we can have this meeting with people on opposite sides of the planet. It is a very exciting time to be an academic. It's an exciting time to be a scientist in a world that is concerned about biodiversity, concerned about the environment, concerned about the future of humanity. And we can all be part of that. You do not have to be, you know, at a major center of learning. You do not have to be at Oxford or Duke. You can be anywhere in the world and share this love that Peter has talked about. So this is a great time, and Peter has said it, I'm going to say it too. You know, this is something we can do for Afghanistan, and we're both committed to doing that.
Thank you, Peter. Any comments?
Well, I have very little to say that wouldn't be repetitive, but I would say that whatever we do for Afghanistan, we do for ourselves. The world is simply one place. The beautiful gardens of Iran and other places of the past can be duplicated, but to me the real importance is that they could be cooperative, respectful programs in which we could show the people of Afghanistan that for once we're not interested in conquering them, overrunning them, running through them, or anything else, but we're simply interested in helping them with something with, as Stuart has just said, is ostensibly very simple, but ultimately much more profound than that, as a symbol of the integrity of the world, which we're so rapidly overrunning and for which we need everyone's cooperation to overcome and to solidify and to build a sustainable future. I'm delighted to be a part of this project. I feel that the world needs many, many projects like this, and I congratulate the organizers on putting this together.
I do too.
The Eden seminars and AFLP truly both aspire to the same thing. We want a level playing field for all scientists across the world, and we feel we have a lot to share. And by giving, we also receive. That's for sure. I think I can tell you for 15 years, many of the scientists, scholars, and academics who stepped in to help the Afghans, invariably, they always wrote that the experience changed their own lives for the better.
Oh,
and it has been such a giving and taking, and the excitement of science and technology. Every time I listen to Stuart, I'm suddenly excited to be living in the 21st century. I can ignore the news for a while. It's true, it's wonderful. Here we are in Hiroshima, where science and technology went wrong. The ethics were introduced. and love made this green city that now stands for a symbol of peace. I cannot be in a better place to share with this. Thank you, Kodi John, for putting up with us. Thank you, Yuko and Taiga, for waking up so early. Thank you, Monte, for being a blessing for all these projects. You have the floor to close. With my love to Stuart and Peter.
Thanks once again, Nassrine. I thought that was a pretty good closing statement myself, so you might have some redundancy here. But I think, first of all, it is to thank Peter and Stuart for giving up their evening. I hope you haven't missed your dinner. Really grateful for the wonderful thoughts that came our way. The importance of your words is not just for ourselves, but for everyone who sees this and hears this on the Eden platform as we edit and put these things out. So I think, I hope that generations of young people will be inspired by your words. And what you have said is that the currency of the future is likely to be this love and care for each other. Today we think of the economy as the be-all and the end-all of this world. We have financial systems, but we corrupt them with arbitrage and speculative transactions. Blockchain emerges, and we hope that there will be some verity in this transaction. We don't know whether that will be corrupted too. But one thing that is eternal, I think, is this capital that is relational, environmental, and these, I think, will be the currencies of the future. The value propositions will no longer, I think, as we approach the end of this century, be purely financial. And I think what Eden is trying to do in this engagement with the two of you, and we hope with others who will also join the bandwagon, is that we will show a way in which financial capital may not be the only way of getting something started. It will no doubt be important at some point, but it must serve the ends of these other capitals, like relational capital among human beings, of friendships, love, trust, care, environmental values, such as protecting life on Earth, protecting these wonderful environments, seeing how they relate to water, which is actually the basis of life. All of these things, I think, are possible purely with this capital that you have so generously shared with us, Peter and Stuart. Thank you ever so much. With that, I would like to close this session. Thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kodi. Bye-bye from Hiroshima.
Bye-bye.
Shab Bekhair.